Hi everyone. Thanks to join today on-site or online. We are to have a very unusual press conference today. First of all, I introduce myself. I am Karine Nishimura, French correspondent of a French newspaper Libération, as well as a French public radio group, Radio France. So, I won't introduce this press conference. I will give the floor to one of my colleagues, which is Pio Demilia. Pio will explain the case today of Vincent Fichot, and Vincent will talk from the place where he is since more than 1 week, which is the Tokyo Olympic Stadium near station Sendagaya. And he will explain us his case. So, Pio, please introduce this press conference, unusual press conference.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much for sharing this press conference today. Thank you, Vincent, for dedicating some of your free time. Actually, you have a lot of free time in these days. I think, well, first of all, let me explain why I'm talking from my home. I just came back from Italy, so I am in quarantine, but I didn't want to miss this opportunity to introduce again, as FCCJ new PAC co-chair, this case. We have hosted Vincent Fichot and other fathers and mothers seeking help to see their kids. Several times by now, but I think we have reached now a very important and dramatic point. Vincent is on hunger strike since already, I believe, 12 days. This is the 12th day, right? Okay. And 12th day is usually a time where the body starts to be, to feel the lack of food. He's drinking, of course, and yesterday he received even the visit of a few MP from Japan, from the Jiminto, from Liberal Democratic Party, namely Mr. Makihara and Mr. Shibayama, who brought him solidarity, at least in words, and also some water, right? Okay, so before we start his statement and the question and answer, let me inform you all that we received, as usually, even in the past, a letter from the lawyer of his wife asking us to make sure that Vincent is not defaming his wife and not naming her. As FCCJ, we have already stated in the past that we do not take any responsibility for what our guests are saying on stage. So just as a piece of information, I will let Vincent know that we received this letter. So it's up to him whether to uphold this or not. So thank you very much, Karen. Thank you, Vincent. Please go ahead with your statement, Vincent.
No, thanks a lot, Pio. Thanks a lot, Karen. With regards to your last point, Pio, I just wanted to say that I'm not here to defame my wife in any way. I am here to defend the interests of my children that have been violated by all state organs in Japan, the police, the judicial branch, and the government. So I started the hunger strike on July 10th, 2021, 12 days ago, and for the simple reason that my children have been abducted 3 years ago, and despite all efforts to ensuring that justice is met and that their rights are fully respected by the Japanese authorities, there has been zero results. So, I'll quickly, if you allow me, summarize what we've done. We took the case to the UN, we took the case to the EU Parliament. I met with President Macron in 2019, who asked for help to Shinzo Abe, who in return told him that there was nothing he could do. And we got to the point where 3 years later, all my attempts to file a criminal case for child abduction in Japan have been rejected, but in return I have been threatened by the police of child arrest should I get anywhere near my children, although I still have the same rights as my wife, and that's an important point. So, once you get to the point where your head of state has asked the Japanese head of state for help, and nothing's being done, this is the last resort, if you wish. As a matter of fact, even the French government has tried on multiple occasions has contacted the Japanese authorities for the last 3 years, asking them to have any sort of contact with 2 French citizens on Japanese soil. And the Japanese government has not replied to any demand from the French government. This is a huge violation of any international treaties and basic human rights laws. And unfortunately, only in Japan do we see this sort of behavior from the government. So the reason I've undertaken that action is simple. I've tried every legal avenues possible in Japan, and I know that the Japanese government clearly does not want to change the situation in Japan. Japan has been defined as the child abduction black hole for a good reason, and I cannot influence anymore the Japanese government. Any measures so far that the government announces, such as the establishment of a council to review, possibly the joint custody. This is not the first attempt from them at doing that, and over the last 10 years has yielded 0 results. So, child abduction is child abuse, and we need to solve that issue ASAP. So, since I couldn't impact the Japanese government or influence the Japanese government, I decided to put pressure on my own government, and this is why I'm doing this hunger strike. Eventually, my children have the French nationality as well, and it is up to the French government to ensure the protection and the safeguard of human rights on their citizens, my children, regardless of where they are, be it on the French territory or outside of its borders. And through this action, really, I'm hoping that the French government will understand how critical the situation has become, and will ask the Japanese government to provide reparation for the human rights violation that my children have been the victim of by the Japanese authorities. And that includes the return to their place of residence, which was Tokyo. This is where they have been abducted from, and the promise of non-repetition by the Japanese authorities. Should the Japanese authorities refuse that, which again would be another violation basically of international laws, I strongly believe that the French government has to step up its game and apply strong sanctions against the state of Japan. France, Italy, I believe, and other governments have expressed their concerns on multiple occasions to the Japanese government for the violations of human rights on our children. And there's been 0 results. So soft diplomacy clearly does not work, and it is time that we start applying gradually sanctions against Japan.
Thanks, Vincent. This is the end of your introduction. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So we will take a question, first of all, from the floor, from Working Press. And after that, we'll take a question online. So if you have question, please use the question submission form to send your question. I will receive it and I will ask to Vincent. Is there any question in the room? Yeah? Yes, please. Give your name and your affiliation before.
Merci. Donc, Isabelle Vincenkis pour lepetitjournal.com. Thanks to your strike, we heard fathers and mothers, but also some ex-kidnapped children went to see you and start to talk. What's their point of view and their hope?
Yes, thanks for that. Since I started this action on July 10th, I've received many visits, not only from the French community that is really providing strong support, and I'm extremely thankful, but also from victims of child abduction being, the left behind parents, but more importantly, the children. And really, for the last 12 days now, I've heard stories that you wouldn't imagine could happen in a developed country. I've had a young girl who's 16 who told me that she had been, in a sense, forcibly separated from her dad, and that she wanted to meet him, but she couldn't. And she was thankful for the fight that I was putting through. I've had many parents. Actually, even recently, yesterday, a Japanese mom came to me, and she was in tears, and she told me that her son had been abducted by her Japanese husband 12 days ago, and she didn't know where they were. And then she looked it up on the internet and realized that there was a high likelihood she would never be reunited with her son again. And she came to seek advice because she found out on the internet that this action was taking place. On last Saturday, it was a very emotional day where 20 mothers representing 5 different nationalities came to provide the support. And it really shows that this issue does not discriminate. Abduction can come from a mother, a father, and eventually the real victims of that or the children. And this is what I would like to convey, in this press, is that I am not here to defend my right to see my children, but I'm really here to defend the right and best interest of my children that are clearly being ignored by the Japanese authorities. But all these testimonies, show the magnitude of the issue in Japan, because when you hear the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Justice in a diet talking, when they're being questioned by MPs, they always say, it's on a case-by-case basis. But I can tell you that if they had been seated here with me over the last 12 days, they could have seen that it's not on a case-by-case basis, but it's really a systematic issue. My case is not unique by any measure. This happens every day to foreign, to Japanese, to mothers, to fathers. And at the end of the day, the children are bearing the brunt of these crimes. And those are crimes. Those are human rights violations.
Any other question in the floor? No? Pio, do you have any question? Pio? Yeah, we have one. Yes, please.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
I'm Yoshi speaking. Can you hear me, Vincent?
Yes, I can hear.
Yes. My name is Hideki Yoshi. I'm a friend of Vincent Fichot. At first, I appreciate for Vincent's bravery in order to disclose the Japanese shameful habit, which is child abduction. This is Japanese shameful situation. So I hear French President Mr. Macron will visit Japan for Tokyo Olympic Paralympic Games, and he will have a meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Mr. Suga. What action do you expect the next step the Japanese government after this top conference? I want to know your expectation or your wants. Please say.
Thanks. Well, to begin with, I don't know anything else that's what's been reported in the press. So I don't know what they're going to be talking about besides what people read. I do expect the Japanese authorities to do what they're good at, is to bury their head in the sand. I frankly have little hope that soft diplomacy is really going to work again in Japan, because it's been an epic failure for the last 10 to 20 years. The Japanese authorities are probably going to say that they're working on it, but we're not going to fall for that anymore. We need results more than promises. And as to the French authorities, how they're going to react to that, well, I believe that if they believe that the Japanese are gonna act, it would really show bad faith from their part. When a country has been ignoring your request to meet your own nationals on that territory for the last 3 years. I don't expect the Japanese authorities to hold their promise starting tomorrow.
Thank you. Yes, my question is this. And next people, please.
Ah, bonjour Vincent. Je suis en conférence de presse, je peux te rappeler? Oui. Un instant, je te rappelle. Ouais. Et est-ce que... Ah non, Pio, do you hear us? I know that
yes.
Pio, yes, you want to ask a question, yes.
Yes, actually, my first question was about Macron. I have some updated information. I wanted maybe to share it with Vincent. I understand that your ambassador is a little bit skeptical about this, and that he didn't visit you, although he already sent some consular officer. What is your feeling after all these days and after all these years about the cooperation of French consular authorities and of your president? Are you really confident that he's going to show up as he granted you audience 3 years ago?
To be perfectly frank, I think it's a 50-50. I think they're really assessing, the pros and cons here. But the aim of this action is not really to get to meet Macron. I mean, I met President Macron. He made a promise, and 2 years later, the situation has worsened. So, more than a promise, I expect results. So, as I said previously, he has to make sure that reparation are provided according to UN principles, which are clearly defined and agreed by Japan, or to apply sanction against Japan. Now, if it's to shake hands and tell me that, they're doing the best, I've heard that 2 years ago, and it hasn't improved the situation of my children at all. Yeah.
Thank you.
A question from online, a journalist online. I'm searching. I'm not sure it's a journalist. It's Junko McBride. She said individuals, or probably individual independent journalist. I don't know. She asked how many American fathers and mothers whose children are also abducted by Japanese ex-partners that you know of.
Actually, not that many. Although, besides Japan, they probably represent the biggest pool of abduction victims by a Japanese citizen. And I don't know why, really. But this fight, it is a very difficult fight. When you get your child abducted and you're facing a system, a country that refuses to grant your children, basic human rights, it's very easy to lose faith and give up. I was lucky enough to meet an Italian father in the same situation as me, Tommaso Pedina, and we've teamed up and we took up the fight to the UN, to the EU, etc. But I have never, up until recently, where a US NGO contacted me, I've never really come across someone who wanted to team up and take some action. I'm not too sure why, really.
We have another question online coming from Sakura Murakami from Reuters. She asked two questions, indeed. First of all, could you please elaborate a bit more on the current status of your custody battle in the Japanese court? Is my understanding correct that you are still legally married to your wife but have not agreed on the terms of custody? And so far, the court have not helped you to find your children, even though you legally still have custody over your children? That's the first question. First of all, answer this question. I will ask the second one later.
Thank you, Karen. So yes, I'm actually legally married still, and I have the same parental right on my children as my wife has currently. But for some unknown reason, when she abducted the children on the 10th of August 2018, from that day on, I, in a sense, de facto lost every parental right, not from a legal perspective, but from a practical perspective, where when I went to try to file a complaint for child abduction, the police refused to take it, claiming that if it's the mother, it's not a crime. But on the other hand, if I got near my children, they would arrest me on kidnapping attempt. This is unthinkable. Really, it's crazy to think that. But in Japan, the kidnapper gets all the rights from the day of the kidnapping, even though legally you still have all the rights. So as of today, I could actually, if we were in a country that respected the rule of law, I could actually go and see my children freely as much as I wanted, without any issues.
The second question is, how would you describe the Japanese single custody system?
Well, it's unique, really, in a G20 aside from I believe Turkey and India. But these countries don't have that because they have clear parental plan, visitation. And first of all, in this country, child abduction is a crime. So you do not move a child from the house without the consent of both parents. And I think that's really the first and one of the biggest issues in Japan. But I would say that the single custody law is an issue in Japan. But the biggest issue is the judicial branch, the judges that don't respect the law. So, for example, the Civil Code was revised in 2011, and the principle really and the merit of the revision were to avoid child abduction, not to grant custody to the parents who committed, the violent crime to kidnap a child in order to secure custody, to grant custody to the parent who was providing a friendly parental plan in order to allow the child to develop and nurture a healthy relationship with both parents. None of these things are being taken into account by the Japanese courts, where the kidnapper secured de facto the custody. So really, the issue is not with the law itself, but it's more with the application of the law itself. Today, if the Japanese authorities were applying the penal code as well as the intent and purposes of the revised Civil Code, Article 766, we wouldn't be in that situation. So tomorrow you can actually pass a law for joint custody, but there will always be loopholes to avoid respecting it. And this is exactly what we saw when Japan passed the Civil Enforcement Act last year. And many countries and many judges in Japan have already found a way to get around that, to avoid returning the child when a court order had been rendered.
Thank you, Vincent. I asked you many questions many times, but I have one more. I asked last week to two ministers of Japan, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Minister of Justice, to what they think about your case, what they will do, how they will treat you, what if they already have some discussion with the French government on your case. And both basically answered the same thing. They said they never comment an individual case. That's not their role. And they said that the law, the justice is independent, and the law is basically respected without commenting about the treaty that Japan signed. And listening to this kind of answer, what is your reaction?
Well, I think, they're truly responding in bad faith. The justice system in any country should be independent. I think, it's one of the bases for any, democracy. On the other hand, once the judicial branch does not fulfill its role and does not respect what the, elected officials, the laws that have been enacted there has to be some sort of supervision to make sure that the system is working properly. And let me give you the example that if suddenly all the judges were sending, if anyone who was committing a violation on the road, speeding tickets, and if all these people were sentenced to death penalty, do you think that the government would say there's nothing we can do because the justice system is independent? At one point, it has to be regulated when it's not working properly. And this is exactly what's happening. The laws are not applied correctly. The international treaties to which Japan is a member of are not respected. And really, the flawed judicial system or the judicial branch in Japan is now causing diplomatic issues. And I'm truly hoping that the visit of President Emmanuel Macron will highlight that and will put pressure on the Japanese authorities to clean up that judicial system.
You also receive a lot of visits, among them a lot of mothers who are in the same situation than you. So generally speaking, people, especially abroad, tend to think that this problem only happens against fathers, but in fact, in Japan, it happens against a lot of mothers. Can you give us some information about what they told you, and if you have some details about the special case of mothers? What is different? Is there any difference between fathers' cases and mothers' cases?
Yeah, and thanks, Karen, for that. I think it's a very good point. And as I mentioned before, it really shows that it does not discriminate, but it also highlights how biased people's mind can be. Because when a father says that his wife kidnapped the children, the immediate response is there's probably a good reason why she did so, and suddenly the domestic violence. The affairs are coming up, in the conversation. However, when I made that video with, the 20 mothers who came here, there was not a single feedback or not even a single assumption that one of these mothers, had been violent. So clearly, it also shows that people are actually leveraging a biased system. And I think that I've been in that situation for the last 3 years, and I see more and more mothers being the victim of child abduction. And I think one of the reasons is, or the main reason is that it's become the race to the bottom, because that there's a chance that your wife is going to abduct the children and that you'll never see your child again. So, maybe in the husband's mind, they prefer kidnapping the child first to secure custody to make sure to maintain a relationship with the child. I'm not defending that act by any measures, but what I'm saying is that the system is encouraging, this drastic step, which is at the end of the day detrimental for the children. From the stories that I've heard from these mothers, it was really sudden, unexpected, and one of them mentioned to me on Saturday when she came, that she knew where her sons were, and she tried to go there, but the police were called upon her, and she had to leave. So, she had been threatened herself of child arrest if she got anywhere near her children, which, really shows that it is this whole child abduction issue, which, happens everywhere in the world, but is very peculiar to Japan in terms of the size of it, is the result of a flawed system.
Thank you, Vincent. I have another question online coming from Enrique Gutierrez, working for Find My Parents, or belonging to Find My Parents. Laws are in place to protect general safety and ensure rights as citizens against abuse by other people. We have obtained several voice recordings from active Japanese judges stating there are no rights for Japanese in Japan in Japanese to Japanese family court proceeding. I don't really understand it, but do you believe the abusers are those in the judicial and law enforcement who are a threat to the safety of citizens, who the law was written to protect in the first place, but mostly, importantly, children. How rampant is the issue within Japan?
I mean, I do think that obviously child abduction happens anywhere in the world, but this is why you have a judicial system and laws that have been enacted to protect the interest of the children. If you, in the example of France, for example, if a child is moved from the house, the abducting parent has 5 days to justify the abduction. Otherwise, the child has to be returned. And if it goes beyond, the kidnapper, in a sense, is facing criminal charges. But in Japan, you don't have that. So clearly, I think, it is human nature, unfortunately, to use what you can to get back at someone else. But there are systems in place anywhere else that prevents that. In Japan, the system not only does not prevent that, but facilitates it. And I think that the most responsible person here are the police and the judicial branch, and of course the government, who hasn't done anything to solve the fight or doesn't seem to be in a rush by any measure to fix the issue.
Thank you. One more question from a freelance journalist, Hanako Lori. She's asking, what do you think in Japan's refusal to recognize dual nationality? Do you fear that your children's rights as French nationals will be ignored? Would Macron, president, advocating for them disrupt Japan's system that denies dual nationality?
Well, if you read the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, it clearly stipulates that this convention is here to protect the identity of the children. So, you can extrapolate that to dual citizen children, and I think that, depriving a child from half of its culture is child abuse in itself. When suddenly you're not allowed to speak the language of one of the parents, of one of your parents, when you cannot practice the religion of one of the parents, you cannot, you don't know the customs of it. It is really a child abuse, and the United Nations clearly defines that as such. Now, Japan can come back to me and say, yeah, but refusing dual citizenship doesn't mean that we do not allow children to be to have two religions, speak two languages. But it also shows that they're not doing anything to facilitate that. And again, it shows really the lack of will of Japan to respect this convention.
Pio, do you have any other question?
Yes. Vincent, I'm sure you have planned these months ahead, if not even more. What is really your limit? I mean, do you really want to go, through this, or do you expect, do you fear, or do you hope that some action will be taken, whether forcibly by the authorities or whether luring you into negotiation? I mean, what do you expect in the following days? I have the kind of feeling that the Japanese authorities may are thinking about some action in the following days.
I'd love to be, I'd love to agree with you, Pio. Unfortunately, I've been in that situation for 3 years. I've been facing a wall. I've been, getting crazy responses from the Japanese government, and I have no faith in the Japanese authorities. And I don't know. I'd love to believe so, but it's very difficult to imagine that a country that today refuses access to France to their citizens on Japanese soil would suddenly tomorrow, respect the children's rights and flip 180 degrees. We've gone, we're so far away from what the norm should be that I think, it's a giant step to take from Japan to be able to deliver what I ask. And what I ask really is not the moon. It's really the respect of my children's rights and reparation for the violations that I've been the victims of, according to UN principles. I'm not asking to interfere with the Japanese law and impose the French law on the Japanese. I'm merely asking them to respect the treaties, the international law that they have ratified. But again, it doesn't seem to be the norm in Japan to respect treaties and treaties. So, and for that reason, I'm willing to go all the way until this happens.
Vincent, I'm sure that your kids are not watching this, hopefully, but your wife may be watching this. Do you have any direct message to her?
No, because I think that, obviously what she's done is a crime. There's a criminal case ongoing in France for child abduction. So I'm going to leave it to the justice in the essence of fairness. But, my fight here is with the Japanese authorities who are responsible for protecting my children when someone commits a crime on them.
We have a question from the floor, please.
Hello, I'm Yusuke Tomiyama, the Yomiuri Shimbun staff writer. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Thank you for your speaking. So I have some quick questions about basic information for your history. So let me ask you, so when did you get married, your wife, Japanese, and so when did you get divorced?
I got married in 2012 and I'm still married.
12?
Oh, sorry, 2009, and I'm still married.
And so your children is son or daughter?
I have two, one son, one daughter.
One son and one daughter?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So may I ask you the children's age? About 6 or around?
6 and 4.
4 and?
6.
6.
6 and 4?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And so when did you start this hunger strike? So 9th?
So I started on July 10th.
July 10, okay. And so when will you continue to this hunger strike during the Olympic Games?
Yeah, if the fact that President Macron might come and meet me or not is not a key date for me. The key date is the return of my children here, so that I can take them home in Tokyo, their home, the house they have been abducted from. And if that doesn't happen, if French authorities cannot convince the Japanese authorities to provide reparation to my children, I will stay unless the French authorities are applying sanctions against Japan to show will to solve the issue. Because Japan will not change without sanctions. It's a given.
Okay. So finally, so ask you again. So what's your expectation to move the change the policy of the Castilian Japanese scheme by your action during the Olympic Games? Again, please.
Sorry, I couldn't understand.
So I ask your expectation to change the policy of Japan for Castilian by your action.
I don't think it has my action. I don't believe the Japanese authorities really care about my action at all. I'm just, here I'm just a gaijin. This is not, we need to see more will from the Japanese government to do something, and we haven't seen it so far.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I have another question for you, Vincent. We personally know a lot of cases of father, mother still in Japan. And I would say we probably know a lot of other cases because the father or the mother had to leave Japan. You have the chance maybe to be in Japan and to be able to fight in Japan. But what do you think about those who had to go back to their home country and who have not the same opportunity to fight against the law and the injustice in Japan?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm lucky enough to have a permanent residency in Japan. But I think, there are many ways to fight. You can do a hunger strike. You can start class actions to the United Nations. You can start, legal action in the United States. You can start an NGO and lobby. There's so many ways that you can fight, and I think there's no action is better than the other, if you want. And I think that if anything happens, in a short term with regards to putting an end to the violations committed by the Japanese government on our children, it's simply going to be the result of all the past actions from everyone in the world that have taken place, over the last 20 years. We didn't get to that level where the media start talking about it, where the government is really, pretends at least to be looking into the issue by one single action. It's been a work in progress for the last 10 years, and I'm extremely grateful for all the people who've taken action before I started, because maybe I wouldn't have taken none of the action if I had seen that I had to start from scratch.
Another question from me. Do you have any advice to give to foreign people married with Japanese people to avoid to have the same experience than you?
Sure, don't have children.
But generally, those who may be afraid to have the same experience already have children.
Yeah. It is a submission game at the end of the day. I've heard so many. I've had many people coming here from all nationalities and telling me, I really hope this solves the issue because, I'd like to get a divorce, but I know that if I do so, it means I'm going to lose my child forever, and I'm living hell at home. And obviously, this is bad for that person, but this is extremely bad for the children to grow up in such an environment. So, it is the fact that you have that threat, of the couple separating, and the main consequence of it is losing your child potentially forever, is tough. So, there's no advice that I can give them. It's just, be submissive, and it's not just foreigners. It's Japanese to Japanese. If you feel like that one parent, is about to pull the trigger, do whatever you can to maintain a relationship with the child. Unfortunately, I have nothing I can do because the police, the judicial branch work against the left behind parents and work against especially the children.
Thanks a lot. Are you okay? Do you want to drink? You can even with the camera. We have one more question from the floor.
Still Isabelle Vincenquist pour lepetitjournal.com. If you have the chance to get your children back, could you accept an amicable settlement to see the kids again, or do you go to justice till the end?
Well, I have a criminal case ongoing, and that obviously I'm not gonna drop it because justice has to be rendered in France at least. But I want my children back for a very simple reason, because I'm not seeing my children does not mean that it's ensuring the respect of their fundamental rights. Right now, in the current, and I don't want to call it custody environment because I still have parental rights, but in the current environment, their best interest is not respected at all. And I know that currently, I mean, it's obvious, the judicial system, the legal system in Japan does not permit the respect of my children's rights. So the only way I can ensure their rights are respected is that if they return home with me here in Tokyo, and if I can protect their interests and ensure that there's a healthy relationship, for example, with their mothers. You know, when we went to court, I filled up a parental plan, and I informed the judge that if I had custody of the children, I would actually allow them to meet to see their mothers every other weekend, half of the holidays, every other birthday, one evening during the week. That the other parents would have full access to the book and records, the medical book and records, the school records, which is normal. You know, I am not here to decide what relationship my children should have with their mother. I'm here to promote a healthy relationship with their mother until they get to an age where they can actually decide the relationship they want with their mom. It is my job as a parent to give them the tools to make up their own mind. Unfortunately, the other side has taken the opposite way, and this is why, and the legal system does not do anything to fix that. And this is why, you know, I need to have custody to ensure the full respect of my children's rights. That's it.
Another question from Richard Solomon, editor-in-chief, Beacon Reports. He's asking about your health. How are you feeling on the 12th day of your hunger strike?
Thanks, Rich. So I'm feeling okay. So I'm only drinking water, obviously. But I had prepped myself. So I undertook a diet 6 weeks before I started. So essentially the first 3 weeks of that, it was a keto diet where I cut off carbs, sugar, caffeine, almost. And the last 3 weeks, I was only having 1 meal a day, which was composed of one omelette and an avocado most of the time, to make sure that, you know, I was getting used to not having so much energy input. So the first few days, actually the first 8 days, I was not hungry at all, which, you know, surprised me a lot. Then I had a dream that I was eating risotto and foie gras, and I think that was the first symptom of the hunger strike kicking in. And I've been craving for some fruit for the last few days. And in terms of energy, obviously, I'm running low on energy. Not only because I'm not eating, but also I'm sleeping here on the floor in front of the station and underneath the shutoko. So, you know, I only get like a few hours break in terms of noise. And I feel like my energy is really low when I go to the gym nearby in the morning, which is about 10 minutes away, to take a shower. And I have to walk up two steps of stairs, and I'm out of breath after climbing the equivalent of 2 floors. I need to take a rest. And my legs are hurting a bit, my stomach a bit, and the dizziness when I stand up is getting more and more obvious. But and actually it reminds me of the athletes, practicing at the Olympic Stadium behind me. You find out that 50% of the fight is in your head, and my children are really my source of energy. And I think that if I was fighting for a different cause, maybe I would feel a lot worse. But I know I'm putting up the right fight for the right reasons, for the right people. So so far so good. Although I'm a bit surprised of how I feel.
Question coming from Mariko. She's asking, what is your wife of the court's justification to prevent you from seeing your children after they took down a domestic violence case against you when you are still legally married and hold custody? I'm sure you have tried every single legal avenue to see your children, so you must have challenged them on this point, but some of their logics are clearly falling apart.
Yes, I have 0 restrictions to see my children, and I have full parental authorities on my children. So, again, I could see them anytime I wanted, but this is not working. So, there's a process in Japan where you can file a form or a case when you ask for permission, for visitation permission. But as of today, I do not have to do it for the simple reason that I still have the same parental rights as my wife and my children, and therefore, if the law was working properly, I should be able to see them as much as I want.
Pure.
And what I would like to say as well is that the embassy has called my wife on multiple occasions, asking them to visit the children to ensure their well-being, and she has refused on every single occasion for the last 3 years. So clearly, the intentions, following the abduction of my children, have been clearly established by her actions.
Pio, do you have another question before we?
Yes. I still am afraid that the Japanese authorities will try to somehow remove you from that spot. Are you prepared to that? Have you received some suggestions, friendly invitation or threats from the police?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say threat. In Japan, it's mostly passive-aggressive. And so when I set up, I would like to say camp, but when I set up my mattress, pretty much that's all I have here, on Saturday 10th, there were many journalists, so the police refrained from coming over. And what you have to know is that I'm actually staying here and sleeping in front of a koban. I'm about 20, 30 meters away from a koban. And they didn't do anything. And then on a Sunday morning at 4 a.m., I got a nice wake-up call from my new neighbors, asking me for my guiding card, asking me to describe the reasons why I were there, how long I'd be there for, what sort of actions would I intend to do, in a very respectful and gentle manner. And then after 10 minutes, the police left. 4 hours later, on the same day, they came back with some more police officers from Harajuku, dressed as civilians, flashing the badge, telling me that they were more worried about, my safety here and health concerns, and they recommended me to just go home, basically, and they were afraid that I would get my belongings stolen, which is when I informed them that I was sitting 20 meters in front of a koban, so I felt very safe. And that night they came back. Another set of 3 police officers came, telling me that they had received complaints from the passengers of the train station I'm sitting in front of, and that they were a bit afraid of nationalists coming to look for trouble for me. And then I gave the same answer to them that I had a bunch of police officers on standby to protect me should that happen. And then they left, and then they didn't come back for another 3 days. And after that, I had a morning visit as well, again. And they told me that President Macron was coming on the 23rd, so I may have to be moved for security reasons, because obviously, someone who does a hunger strike is a form of violence. And then they were very well informed. They told me that they had seen that in France, the Yellow Jackets were very violent people, and they didn't want any trouble. And that more recently, President Macron had been slapped by someone, making a protest. So in a way, they implied that they were afraid that I would slap Macron should he come and see me, which was nuts. And luckily that day, I had 3 community leaders from France working, very closely with the consulate who were present, could listen to the conversation and, reassure the police officers that, this is not my kind and my intentions were very peaceful. But I do expect a visit from them very soon as we near the 23rd. So I'm going to try to go and see them and explain them that I'm happy to move further, further away, 20, 30 meters away. So I'm not really standing right in front of the train station, but I can still stay here because with this heat, if I moved anywhere else, it'd be very difficult and it would pose some really serious health concerns. And, even though I feel like I'm okay, I know that, my health is deteriorating every day, obviously. And a heat stroke could be, could pose some serious risk to my health.
Thanks, Vincent. Any other question? The last one? Yes, please.
Thank you again. Vincent-san, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Please give your message to Japanese people and your spiritual message, please.
That's a tough one. My message is really more to the government of Japan, saying, please start respecting the interests of our children, because children are the future of the nation, and this is even more relevant in the case of Japan, which has a huge aging population. So, respect the treaties that you signed, show some sign of integrity, and listen to the voice of the Japanese people, because this is just not me. There are hundreds and thousands of Japanese parents who are fighting for their children, and there are thousands of children victims of this crime that deserve justice.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vincent. I think we have no more questions. We just hope to see you in the near future with your 2 children, and to take pictures of 3 people, Vincent and Tsubasa and Kaede.
Thank you very much, Karen.
Thanks
and thank you for organizing that.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's necessary, because we know a lot of people in the same situation, and we know that you are not only fighting for your children, you are also fighting for the right of a lot of children in the same situation who are growing without one of their parents, and who we lost part of their identity in this very tight experience. Thanks a lot, Vincent. I hope to see you in the coming days. Thanks.
Me too.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody. It is the end of this press conference, and see you for next time.
Thank you.